Hello and welcome to the first episode of 8-Bit Symphony, a podcast about video game music. I'm Tyler and I'm here with Christian. So I was thinking about starting by introducing ourselves and talking about who we are and how we came to be here. So my name is Tyler. I am a composer, kind of, not yet, but I went to school at UCR for a bachelor's in composition, which is where I met Christian.
So I'm Christian Clark. I'm a freelance composer and sound designer for video games. I'm actually from the East Coast, and I met Tyler with UCR, where I got my master's in digital composition.
Oh, you graduated?
Yeah, I just graduated.
Fuck yeah, man.
Woo!
Congrats.
Claps for everyone.
Hell yeah.
Yes, and I'm staying for my PhD until one company, decides to pick me up for all I'm worth.
For not freelance?
Yeah. I've just finished interning at a company in Van Nuys, and it was great, and they're giving me some work. So, yeah, I mean, my passion for video game music is unparalleled, except
Awesome.
Maybe by Tyler here.
No, probably not. I have a very specific section of video games that I'm passionate about when it comes to music. That's RPGs. I found them to be extraordinarily deep and built towards the lore and the world around them. Just talking with you about all the games you're talking about, I'm like, fuck, I never played those. So, I mean, it's going to be cool because you seem to have a different approach to video game music than I do. Mm-hmm. It looks like, I don't know, maybe I'm talking out of my ass here, but from what I've listened to and the stuff that you've composed back at UCR, you seem to kind of take a more of a dynamic approach to music, where I kind of usually take a more like a uematsu approach, where it's just like, here's the song, and we just loop the fuck out of it.
Yeah.
Am I right there, or do you...
Yeah, well, I've actually had to do everything. I wrote a lot of loops for one of the IPs at my studio, and that was all loop based. But I did like that one project that I was telling you about was all just it's a lot of loops, but because of that, I had to compose it dynamically and imagine putting it together that way.
Yeah. Well, you're talking right now about like little small loops, right?
Yeah.
Like something you maybe find in like electronic music.
Exactly.
Yeah. When I said loops, I was kind of referring to having like a full like 3 or 4 minute piece.
Right. Yeah. That's what I've usually been doing most recently. But I really like the dynamic approach, and I've actually been thinking about new ways of doing it. I actually wrote a paper about how Igor Stravinsky, how he composes music. I argued that the way he composes music, we could actually make like a soft piece of software that composed music in his way.
So almost mathematical.
Yeah. It is very mathematical the way he did everything. And when you look at how the music he wrote was developed, there's really not that much musical material.
Yeah.
You listen to the Rite of Spring, and it's crazy.
Oh,
but
it's almost all rhythmic based in the Rite of Spring.
And once I really got into it for this paper, I was like, this is just 4 different motifs. It really is. Yeah. It's crazy, and like per section, but it's interesting. Yeah. But I grew up, as well, and the reason I'm like a video game composer is like when I was 7, I wanted to. I was playing Final Fantasy IX. I walked out into the world map, heard Crossing Those Hills, and I was like, I'm going to be a video game composer when I grow up. And my parents were like, yeah, that's nice.
For me, it was Liberi Fatali.
Ooh, yeah.
I didn't play 9 until much later, probably only about a couple years ago. But for me, it was 10 was the first, then followed by 7. And I love those games, and I love the music in it. But it wasn't until I heard Liberi Fatali when I started playing 8 that I was like, oh shit, this is legit. This is really fucking cool. I wasn't quite set on being a video game composer, but that was a time where I wanted to make video games. And that's what I went into going into high school. I took classes on working on Maya, which is a 3D program from Autodesk, and it's the type of stuff you'll see graphics made out of. The big one is 3ds Max, but Maya is another popular one. In our high school, we used that. So that's where I started going. And when I got into college, our local college, I started falling out of love in that. Yeah. And I was in a guitar class with the professor there. And I just kind of fell in love with that. The following semester, I took Music 100. It was just simple basic theory. And I fell in love with that. And the professor, Mark McConnell, insisted that I take part in the composer's recital they had there. And I was the only person in that class he asked.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was people from 101 and the people who were kind of more serious and into that, but he asked me to take part in it. So I wrote a couple of pieces that were thematically connected, made like a little part 1 and part 2, and had it performed live by professional musicians. And after that, when I saw that performance live, I was like, oh, I'm in.
Yeah.
This is what I'm doing. So it took me a little while to get to there. So I didn't really even start music until college, which is why I feel so behind compared to everybody else, especially at UCR.
That's so awesome. I was like, I'm a composer almost reluctantly. And I come from a completely musical family. And that's, so growing up playing video games.
There's not a single person. I mean, like, there was my brother who played guitar when he was a kid.
Right.
And I played drums since I was like 15. But it was more like, hey, I'll play for a month and I'll put them away for a year.
Right.
And then I picked up my first guitar in high school, senior year in high school, because we had a school project. So I was like, oh, I'll sing a song, and played a guitar and sung a song, and that made me go to that guitar class in college. But other than that, I had like no musical experience. So I felt like I was at such a handicap. So it makes me happy that I have a bachelor's, but I'm not doing much with it. I'm in construction right now.
That's cool.
Yeah. But it's something that I'm starting to do, and that's why I want to do this podcast, because it allows me to focus on music, listen to music, and kind of get my brain working in that realm again. Because after not doing anything with that shit for over a year, I started looking back at my music theory books and being like, what the fuck is this? And it really kind of threw me for a loop. So I'm glad we're doing this. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. I'm kind of working on a project, but it's not really video game related. It's a musical.
Oh,
and, yeah. And it's a 1-act musical romantic comedy type of thing. The problem is, the reason it's taking so long is because I fucking suck at writing lyrics.
Well, what?
So
why don't you get someone else to write lyrics?
I'm trying.
Yeah?
I don't know a lot of people who are like really good at lyrics, and my buddy who graduated with a degree in English and was really good at writing, creative writing. I'm trying to get him to, but he finally just graduated.
Cool.
So I'm going to try to shift it off to him and see what he can do with it.
Cool. If not, I know someone. That could maybe,
Give me the name for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that we're all introduced and we're all good to go, let's talk about the topic of today, which Christiaan has brought to the table.
Yeah, so ever since, I was a kid, I loved Final Fantasy, and that was my sort of introduction, but my first favorite video game was Spyro the Dragon. And so, we could always start one of these podcasts about video game music by talking about the music of Nobuo Uematsu, who I love.
Yeah, he was my favorite for a long time. I mean, he's still my favorite, but I've kind of grown into appreciating some of the other composers. First and foremost, the other Final Fantasy, Hitoshi Sakimoto, Masashi Hamauzu, the one who just did 15.
Yoko Shimomura.
Yoko Shimomura. Oh god, her soundtrack for 15 was incredible.
But
all those guys, but Nobuo is always the first one that comes to mind because it's so melodic. See, we're on it again.
Yeah, we're on the tangent. It's so difficult. So I was like, you know what? Let's kick it back. Let's get topical.
Yeah.
And so Stuart Copeland, composer of the Spyro the Dragon music,
which I did not know until you told me about just earlier.
Yeah.
So that was a shock to me. Because the Police, not a huge fan.
Yeah, he's the drummer for the
Police. I really respect what they've done. I love a lot of their songs, and obviously I come from a percussion background, so the drums for the Police were always really cool. And the fact that, especially back in the PlayStation 1 day, that they were able to get someone like Stuart Copeland to come in, like that shit is unheard of, to get someone of that stature to come in for video games.
I almost wonder, I feel like I've heard that the Police, the members of that group, really did not like one another. So it almost felt like once he left that group, he was like, I'm just done. You know what? I'm going to go do something completely different. And then Insomniac Games comes up to them. It's like, we got a game about an adolescent dragon that needs to save all the adults because they screwed up.
Adolescent dragon.
Yeah.
That guy's got some fucking sass to him.
Yeah. So I thought, this would be an interesting one to talk about because they're making the Reignited trilogy.
Yes, they are.
Which is what I've been hype about ever since they did the 20th anniversary for Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah, that was freaking cool too. Now, I was always more of a Crash guy. I actually played the Crash games. I never played the Spyro until this week, which is interesting. I mean, that's not true. I played the Spyro demo that came with one of the demo discs. I'm trying to remember which one it was, because when I got my PlayStation 1, it came with a red demo disc and it had a whole bunch of games. Or it came with the Pizza Hut one.
Well, the third Crash game had a demo. Warped had a demo for... You might have played it on that, too.
No, because I never played Warped. The Crash game I played was Wrath of Cortex. Or
Wrath of...
Yeah, Crash Bandicoot 2.
Or Cortex Strikes Back.
That one, yeah. The Crash Bandicoot 2. And that was my game. That was my platformer. That was my platforming and game that I played. So pretty much none of the other ones really struck my fancy. But one of the demos that I got, there was a Pizza Hut demo. And it might have been on this one. And it came with Metal Gear Solid, and it came with Gran Turismo, and I think it came with Spyro as well. And if it didn't, then it was on the red one that came with the PlayStation back in 1998. Anyway, that's where I played Spyro, and I found it to be interesting and fun. It was kind of cool. I liked the graphics. I liked the feel of it, but I never got it. And I just started playing it this week, and the music, obviously, was the thing that stood out to me. I think that is the star of that game, is the soundtrack. Because overall, from what I've experienced in my very early stages of this game, the gameplay is not really that great. It's old, so I mean, we'll start there. I'm judging it on modern day, expectation. So modern day expectation, you expect tactile response, which it does not have. Jumping doesn't always work. It's old, and I don't find it to be very challenging, but it makes sense. It's for kids, so I'm not holding it against it. But the gameplay loop is you find dragons that are stoned and revive them, and then collect coins, gems.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I found that to be kind of boring, but I understand for what it is and for what it was during that time. But the thing that stood out to me was the music. It just, from the moment you turn it on, you hear those drums kick in. You're like, holy shit. Yeah.
I know. I've always been intrigued, and I've always wondered if some of the games that I love so much, if it really is not because of the gameplay, but actually because the music is what kept me going.
I'm sure. I'm sure there are examples of that I can think of for myself too.
Yeah, but I will say, you've only made it through a bit of the first game.
No, I'm aware. Yeah.
And the challenge gets once you get to treetops, that's rage-inducing.
Where does the challenge come from there? Is it enemies? Is it platforming?
The enemies are never a problem in those games.
So what it is battling the controls.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. It's platforming. It's making sure when you press X, it responds the way it should. So I know. But once you get into some of the later games, which is always so funny because for the second game and the third game, you got so many more mobility options of things you could do. So to get to certain areas, you had to jump and then glide and then press triangle to hover, which is a quick jump up.
Is that a thing you get later in the game?
You don't get that in Spyro 1. You can't even swim in Spyro 1.
You drown like Tommy Vercetti.
So it's so strange because I'm so used to those games. I go to use those abilities in the first game, and I'm like, no, I'm dead.
Yeah,
because I thought I could make that.
I'm curious. Do you know? You said you played it at E3, right? The Reignited trilogy.
I did play the Reignited trilogy.
Was it one?
Yes.
Did you see if they added those, or is it a true to form remake?
Oh, it's true to form.
Okay.
So one of the things they've been talking about is how they actually. I don't know how they did it. There's a JavaScript involved in some of this stuff. They took the exact location, polygonal location of everything in the original games. They got that information out of the original games, and then they just put that information into this brand new area. So everything is exactly where it was before.
So they use that as a skeleton to build around?
It was literally a skeleton. In fact, I think
that's really trippy.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's crazy. And there was an entire team just dedicated to that, getting that information, I think.
No, I'm actually kind of curious if that was a similar thing that they did with Crash, because I know Crash was a pretty true to form remake too.
Yeah, I don't think they did that for Crash though, because I also remember there's people were complaining the jumping doesn't respond the same way.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Things
I heard that too.
Yeah.
So, moving on, you were talking to me earlier about your trepidations with the new one, with specifically the music.
Right.
Because you were thinking that they might take it into a more dynamic direction. So what were some of your trepidations with the remake or the new trilogy with the music?
So this is an interesting week because when we decided to do Spyro the Dragon, we didn't actually realize there was going to be news about this.
Yeah.
Literally,
that's actually really true.
Either yesterday or 2 days ago, they just announced that you can actually just have the Stuart Copeland soundtrack.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but that Stuart Copeland's coming back to actually rearrange these pieces.
Yeah, I don't know if he's the one doing the rearranging, but I also know for the whole game, like for the title screen of the three, where you see the 3 games.
I know he's composing a new piece.
Yeah, he's composing this beautiful suite of like the theme of 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I didn't really look at much about what he was composing. I just knew that he was composing a new piece.
He's definitely involved, which is always exciting to see. But my main concern about the remastered, now I'm not going to be the guy that's like, I hate new things. No. I'm actually intrigued. As a composer, I want to see what their thought process was.
But at the same time, it is your childhood, so you're a little...
I like the fact that you can have the nostalgia,
yeah,
which was great in Final Fantasy 15 with the radio.
Oh, God, dude, I would seriously just kind of sit in the car and just let it go.
But yeah, so my main concern about the remaster, and I'm going to play every single level. I'm not going to change to the Stuart Copeland one. I might even do like just the second gameplay just so I can have that nostalgia again. But my main concern with that, so what I saw when I played the level Toasty at E3, so they had 2 levels available. They had Toasty, and of course they had Treetops, because that is the that's like
they probably wanted to see if
pinnacle of frustration,
any improvement or lack of improvement, just to kind of show show the fans that, hey, we're sticking true to form. Like, this is as frustrating as you remember.
It's still as frustrating. It is. I don't think that level was actually finished yet. It was frustrating in the demo. I don't think they had the entire thing there. And then I know they had some like behind closed doors. They had entire Sunny Flight available too. I love those flight levels. But yeah, so my main concern with the dynamics when I was playing through Toasty was that with Stuart Copeland's original loop, you had a very relaxed. In Toasty, you kind of had this like very relaxed A section with just the ethereal noises. Then it was like a sort of A prime where a bass line was added to those ethereal noises. Then there was a big moment in the loop where you had bum 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 ba-dum bum 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 come in.
It's kind of like a nice little jazzy swing version of the original from the opening theme in the game.
Exactly. And so this is
the
first
a little slowed down, a little brought back, and kind of more of a chill, like snappy version of it. And I really dug that.
What I love about that too is that first world, everything's a pushover in that first world. You can go through that level in all those worlds, collect everything in like 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's about right.
So that when you go through Toasty there, the easiest boss that's ever existed, you're literally fighting a sheep. It's nice because you get that main motif back, and you're like, oh man, this is gonna be a fun game. It's like that. It's almost like once you get to that level and you beat that level, that's where you see the title screen. That's what I always felt. That was that world was your introduction. Then when you got to Peacekeepers, it was like, we're actually going for it now.
Speaking of Peacekeepers, that's the first song that I listened to. I was like, ooh. Actually, the majority of the middle chunk of it, I enjoyed. It's that fanfare at the beginning and the middle.
Boom, boom, boom,
yeah.
Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, it's very dissonant, which is fine. I love dissonance in my music, but it just doesn't fit the rest of the song, and it feels like he tacked that on to kind of make it feel like it belongs in that type of
he tagged something onto his style.
It like what I love about this music, and what I love about a lot of certain video game music, right, is when the composer says like, fuck making it like feel like it belongs in this world, we're just gonna make it rock out. When I think about games like Persona 4, Persona 5, Persona 3, all these Persona games, the music is there as the star of the show.
Yeah.
And the music is there, and it just rocks out, and it's not really influenced by what's going on in the story. And in the same way, I feel like Hotline Miami. It's all about the music. Oh. It's just bumping music the whole way through, and it's so much better for it. Now imagine if Hotline Miami added a chicken sound at the beginning of every song because you have a chicken helmet or something, right? It's like it doesn't belong there, and it kind of detracts from the coolness of the piece. So when and that's true for the earlier stuff in the game too. I felt that it was just more about making cool music that kind of fits in the area but isn't influenced by it. Until you get Peacekeepers, and it's got that fanfare, which feels a lot like, well, if you play the game, you go up into this area and it almost feels like a god realm, almost kind of like a Mount Olympus type of feel. I mean, I'm still in that area, so I don't know if that's like the point of it, but with the name Peacekeepers and the way that you go up in the balloon to reach it, it kind of feels like that is an upper echelon in the world or something. And the fanfare fits that, but it doesn't fit the music. And when it cuts back to that fanfare halfway through the song, I'm like rocking out, and then I hear that, I'm like, back to this again. So it kind of detracts from the cool vibe of the rest of the track.
So that's interesting. Let's talk about that. So yeah, my problem with the dynamic music was that this might actually help you when you're playing the remaster. So what I noticed when I was playing Toasty was with that form, the A prime, B, it starts, and if you don't move at all, you will hear nothing but that A ethereal music forever, and the bass line won't even kick in. It's not until you get to the actual boss, Toasty, where the drums kick in and that big moment comes in. I mean, I'm all about that. I like that growth. If that was the first time I played the game, that would be like, this is epic. I love that the music's working with me as I go through this level. But as a nostalgic individual, I'm worried that because I have certain moments of each piece that I love so much, I'm a little worried that I'm going to kill the enemies so fast
that you're not going to get to it.
I'm not going to hear it.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah, especially that song. Toasty is a really incredible song. Now, we would show you or not show you, obviously, but we would play for you the Toasty theme, but there's no official audio. It's just in a gameplay. So you can search up the gameplay, and you can kind of listen to how it dynamically shifts throughout the level. But what we're planning on doing through this is playing for you the piece that we're talking about if we want to dive into a specific piece and kind of dissect it. We'll play it, talk over it, kind of show some of the highlights throughout it, and then kind of talk about it afterwards. But yeah, so if you're interested, you can find it just by looking up the level. Was it Toasty? Yeah. Toasty Reignited Trilogy, and then you just listen to the music while he's playing through it, and you'll see how the music starts to shift as it progresses throughout the level. And it's really cool how it works. When you were showing me earlier, it's pretty cool how it ends up going through, and it's starting soft, and you're just playing through the first opening area, and when you hit that little mid boss or whatever, you actually start hearing that bum 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 ba-dum bum ba-dum bum. Yeah, I freaking like that. So
it's amazing how many times you can hear that and not be sick of it.
Yeah. I mean, going back to Persona, that's what I thought about Persona 4. I mean, did you ever play those games? Oh,
I have not.
You are missing out on some fucking music, dude. The Persona 3, 4, and 5 has some of the best music in video games.
I can get those on Steam, right? No? Or I got it on PS4 too.
Yeah. Okay. You can get, you can get Persona 5 on PS4 if you have a PS3. Do you have a Vita?
I do not have a Vita.
God damn.
Do you have a Vita?
Hell yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Day one purchase.
Nice.
Still my favorite system of all time. Really? And I mean that.
You can use it as a controller too, right?
Yeah, for the PS4.
That's awesome.
No,
that is pretty cool.
You can't go into the Vita expecting it to be a PS4. It is very specifically some cool AAA games from when it first came out, a lot of cool Japanese niche games, and a lot of indies. And it's just a hardware powerhouse. And it's a really cool system, but I'm not here to gush about that. But Persona 4 Golden, which is the ultimate version of Persona 4 until it is eventually re-released, because we know it all will be. We all know it'll be. They can't stop milking that shit. But Persona 4 Golden is incredible. If you have I think it is actually on PS4 on PS2 Classics. Okay. Yeah, Persona 4. If it's not there, it is on PS3. Persona 3 right now, the only way you can play it is on a PS2 or on the PS3 through the PS2 Classics. But even if you just go online on YouTube and look up the soundtrack, you'll see what I'm talking about. But it is best to do it while playing through the game, because you kind of get the feeling of it. Yeah. But what it is a very rock each one's different. So Persona 3 was a rock jazz kind of with a hip hop element to it. So they had Lotus Juice, who's a hip hop artist in Japan, rapper, really really cool, a lot of really fucking smooth flow, and a female vocalist who accompanies him.
Sure.
Got some really fucking crazy music on that. Persona 4 is more of a pop oriented and J-pop, J-rock oriented, and it's got the main vocals are from a girl or from a couple of girls or whatever, and the music is awesome in that too. Persona 5 is more of a jazz rock with this one older, almost like Enka singer, if you've ever heard of Enka.
I have not.
If that's correct, but it's like it's a style of music typically done by older women in Japan, and it's kind of more of a soulful type of music rather than a pop.
That's awesome.
And although it is still a little poppy, but her voice has got a little bit more of a grittiness to it than the other stuff, and it's got a really cool feel to it. But really, what the star is the bass, the drums, the guitar. It's got rock / hip hop / like EDM kind of vibes, where it's just more of a pulsing flow that you hear, and there's nothing wrong with the music. It's some of the best music I've heard in video games. It's reignited my love for video game music in those games. The composer for that, I can't remember his name right now. It's not to say that I don't love him. I forgot for a second, but his music is incredible.
We got Google.
Yeah,
we
got Google. And I'm gonna
shout out
like fucking face palm when I hear what his name, but okay, so we got sidetracked there a little bit.
You were talking about how it's similar motivically to Spyro, because we were talking about the main like motivic element of Spyro, and you were saying.
Okay, so I think I was just saying that. Oh, I was thinking that in that it was a kind of like a powerhouse music. I hope.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it really shines.
Yeah, it really shines through that, and that. So let's just forget all that right now and go back to Spyro because
it was his name is this right? Shoji
Meguro.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shoji Meguro. Yeah, look up some of that stuff.
Oh.
We'll have episodes on that. I'm gonna make you play at least one of these games.
Oh no, I've always wanted to.
Yeah. Well, they're great RPGs. They're super fun and they have great stories. 3 is the darkest story, but it has a really big lull in it that you have to kind of grind through. 4 is a kind of happier story. It's kind of contrasting in that way. Like they're all color oriented too. So 3 is blue, 4 is yellow.
Oh, I love that.
And then 5 is red.
Okay.
So they're all thematically colored, and and they all kind of represent that, right? 3 is blue. It's the most depressing. It's dark. It's kind of fucked up. 4 is a little fucked up. I mean, it's like thematically when you think about it, it's fucked up. But the way they do it in the game, you're kind of like, yay! It's super fun, happy and fun. Go time. People died. Whatever, you know.
Right. Of course.
And then 5 is the main character is named Joker. He's a cat burglar. What do they call that? Is that he's a thief.
Yeah.
He's like Lupin the Third, right? And that's what he's about, and there's really cool themes and really dark stories, and they're just, I can gush about these all the time, and we will. On some episode we're going to talk about it, but so let's just get back on track here. Is there any song that you are interested in talking about right now that you might be?
Oh man, there's so I know you haven't heard it yet. But I know I mentioned that Midnight Mountain from Spyro 3 is my favorite. Spyro 3 is my favorite soundtrack, and you haven't played that game
I haven't,
yet.
No. I've only touched Spyro 1.
I'm really excited to hear that remaster.
Yeah.
There's some of these. So one of my favorites, and I've always been intrigued.
I wonder if they're going to have a soundtrack, release.
Like on Spotify?
Yeah.
Well, I figured they did that with Crash. You can get
you did. They did. Okay.
Most of the tracks from the Crash remaster.
Because that might be a cool way to be able to listen to it without the dynamic shifts throughout the level.
Yeah, well, yeah, right, because they'd have to, make it this one little concrete thing.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's a good point, actually.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, if you want to hear, like, how they remaster, they might have the soundtrack or something like that. But, yeah, so do we want to listen to that and talk about that song real quick?
Yeah, let's listen. So, it's the track for when you're finding Agent 9, and I think that's his name, Agent 9. Keep talking.
Sure, go with it.
Keep talking. I'm going to bring this up on YouTube.
So yeah, so here's the song. We're going to listen to it now.
As a kid, I've always been, or I was intrigued why I'm so into mixed meters.
Okay, first thing I want to say about this, and this is about the whole thing in general. Bass. The bass is always, every single song, the bass is just grooving, and it's just killer.
Oh, you hear this right here? He's got a 7/8 groove, but the guitar is hitting every quarter note.
Yeah.
So it off-places it. Off-placed, right there. I love that. So this is in 7, which, as a kid,
7,
who
8?
cares? Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I'm playing this as a kid, and I'm grooving along, and I'm having a blast.
Yeah.
Because especially
it's smooth. It doesn't feel off. Yeah, that's cool.
And you play as the character Agent 9 in this game for the first time, and he has a gun, which.
We're still talking about dragons, right?
We're still talking about the dragon game.
Okay.
I'm telling you, it gets more complex in these later games, dude. It's a blast. So yeah, we get you get to play as Agent 9, who is a monkey, and all those characters you actually can see on the cover there. You say them like a yeti, a kangaroo.
Mm-hmm.
Sergeant Bird is amazing because he can drop bombs. When you can play as these characters as they've been captured by some like evil dragon queen.
Okay.
And I've always wondered why I've loved mixed meter so much. And this isn't mixed meter. This is just asymmetrical meter in 7 because it's consistently in 7.
Yeah.
But
now, what's the mixed meter?
Mixed meter is when it goes back and forth.
Back and forth, like
You're
3, 4, 4, 4,
a mixed bag of meter. So I like to think of it. Yeah.
So
exactly.
It's kind of more of like a progressive feel. Yeah.
Which there's a great tune in Final Fantasy 9 that has mixed meter that we could talk about. Just the one where you're hurrying, we're trying to run away from something.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think it's literally just called run.
Yeah.
Exclamation
point. I mean, that's what it is in every game.
But no, that's just it. I feel like when you might hear me every now and then talk about film music, and I don't mean bad about it. I'm just not a huge fan of film music compared to video game music. I just love the intricacy.
It's different. The way they're done is just, it's handled differently, I feel. Film music is reactionary, I feel. Whereas game music, I feel, is composed in order to give emotion to the
It has to react. Nowadays,
film music or game music?
The video game music has to react to what you do now. That's what I love.
Yeah.
And I
mean, like maybe today, but like back in the day, like when you think of like Final Fantasy again, Final Fantasy was about creating music that like felt right for the setting.
Yeah.
It was like setting music rather more than anything.
Yeah.
But like I feel like movie music, you have a lot of. I think most composers for movies watched the movie as they wrote the music, so that they would have the right violent screech as something happened, or especially when you get into horror movies. But I see what you're saying. Like they're just composed differently, so it's kind of hard to I don't know. Like I feel because of that, movie music, film music has a harder time translating outside of the film.
Yeah.
Like when I listen to film music on Spotify, it's always like, wow, this was so much better in the movie.
Yeah.
Movie music, it doesn't translate well outside of the medium. It's like specifically built for the film, and if you watch it outside of the film, it loses its nature.
And there's something about video game music where I can just pop. I have an entire Spotify.
I think it has a lot to do with where it came from. If you look up extra credits, you can find a video they did about video game music, and it's a fantastic video. And I know there's a lot of people out there who give them crap, and maybe rightfully so. But that video in particular was really great. And what they did was they talked about the limited abilities of composers back in the 1980s when they started writing music for the NES era.
Yeah.
And that during the chiptune era, during the NES, that there was a maximum of 3 notes that you could play at one single time, and you had to diversify between beat, melody, and rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, they had to focus on one thing. They had to really say, like, what's the most important thing here? Melody. And that's why you get these incredible themes like the Final Fantasy theme, like Castlevania, like the opening theme from Castlevania, and all these incredible songs with memorable melodies. And I think that carries through in that identity to today.
Yeah. Well, exactly, yeah. Yeah, the original limitations, how that's transformed video game music today.
Yeah, I think it would be a different beast if it was like, if video games started today.
Exactly. I mean,
it would be completely different.
You couldn't really do chords. I mean, I've watched interviews with Nobuo Uematsu who talks about this, and
you could, but that'd be all you had.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why the Final Fantasy Prelude, it's just an arpeggio.
Yeah.
That's all you could do. You couldn't, you had to play the notes separately. And in addition to that, if you actually take some of the original video game sound effects from back in the day, they're actually just arpeggios that are sped up to be as fast as humanly possible. Like the coin sound effect.
Yeah, the coin sound from Mario. Ba-ding.
Yeah, but there might be other, ones in there because they're just using. I mean, all these things back in the day used things called PSGs, programmable sound generators, and they were actually, so technically they were playing all the music in real time. That's another cool thing. It's processing all that music in real time. I think. I'm assuming. From what I've read, I mean, I didn't grow up in that era, but
yeah, that's really interesting. So the song that you just had us listen to, what about that? Other than was there anything other than the mix meter or the complex meter that stuck out to you, or is that pretty much like the main driving force?
Well, that's the main driving force, because I'm always amazed whenever a composer can write something on an odd meter, and I can't tell.
Yeah. I mean,
right? That's a groovy song.
Yeah.
I want to dance to that, but I can't unless I have a limp.
One of the best bands that I've been listening to recently that just mastered that is called Thank You Scientist, and they have mastered that ability to make you dance and feel like you're dancing in a 4/4 groove, even though you're dancing in a fucking weird meter. And like their song "Mr. Invisible" is such an incredible song for that. It got this really funky feel to it, and you want to dance all the time. But when you really dive in and listen to it, you're like, wow, this is kind of weird. But
my feet aren't landing where they should be.
Well, they are. That's the strange thing. It's like they are, but you don't feel like you're not dancing in 4/4. It's just, it feels right. They get you going in the right, like it's got a standard, like a straight beat to it, right? But when you actually kind of like listen out, you're like, this is not 4/4. And it's got a weird rhythmic rhythm to it, and it's just super funky though. But it's just so, man, those guys are really good at doing just that.
Yeah,
getting you complex meters and making you realize like, oh man, like I didn't even notice.
Yeah, well, it's little things like that where the music comes from a percussionist. That's what we never forget. Yeah. He's a drummer. Yeah. And that's where all of this grooviness comes from.
Which is why I found it so weird, but also kind of befitting if you think about it, that I found the bass to be the star of the show. I mean, bass is essentially the string version of drums. So it's like, it's very much like, for those who don't know,